Hello, I'm Samantha Steimer, and I'm covering the two sessions. Chinese-style modernization is a political buzzword at this year's two sessions. When joining in a deliberation with fellow deputies from the 14th National People's Congress from Jiangsu province, President Xi Jinping called for more efforts to be made into building China into a modern socialist country in all respects. But what is Chinese-style modernization? What makes it different from Western modernization? Today, I'm going to speak with John Ross, a British scholar, to hear more about his views on the subject. So I'm excited to talk with you today. In your own words, in your own opinion, what exactly is Chinese-style modernization?
The core for me is that it's people-centered development from several points of view. Firstly, the goal is the improvement of the conditions of the people. Then I think we can also take it for poverty alleviation. China's very dramatic economic growth, particularly after 1978, which is the fastest of any major country in world history. Nevertheless, despite the growth, it left somewhere 50 to 100 million people who were in very inaccessible places or very, very underdeveloped regions. And let's say they weren't lifted out of poverty by simply economic growth, which lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. But they weren't then left to be, okay, well, sorry, you've lost out on this because it's not profitable to get you out of poverty. Instead, what happened was that China was mobilized, all the resources of the state, all the resources of the Communist Party, to make sure that these last 50 to 100 people were taken out of poverty.
If we would say China's modernization is very people-centered, what would you say is the largest difference between China's modernization and West modernization?
Western-style modernization, to put it very bluntly, is based on the greatest crimes in human history. It was based on slavery, the transportation between 10 and 15 million people across the Atlantic in order to develop slavery within the United States. It was based on the biggest genocide in history. And we could go into other things. The British rule of India meant that India's economy didn't develop for about 200 years, or the famines which the British had in India. So historically, I'm not trying to sound alarmist, but it's just a fact that the Western modernization or colonialism, these are the biggest crimes in human history. Therefore, that was the basis of Western-style modernization.
Right? But keeping these differences in mind, the differences you just mentioned between the Western modernization and Chinese modernization, what do you think will be their meaning China's biggest obstacle as they continue to modernize, as they move forward within this year and the next?
What you would hope to see is China's development, of course, benefits other countries. It is a win-win development. This is, fortunately, some people in the world want to interfere with this because it's made China the world's most rapidly growing economy. If you look at competition between China and the United States, firstly, nobody can complain if the United States competes by speeding up its own economy. But the United States embarked upon a policy not of attempting to speed up its own economy, but of attempting to slow down China. Firstly, by imposing tariffs on China. This breaks up globalization. It's costly for the American household. In addition to tariffs, you take bans. The United States wanted to drive Huawei out of the telecommunication systems. Now, this attempt to slow down China is very negative from the point of view of world growth, if it was successful, because China's growth is one of the main factors accounting for world growth and aiding all countries. There are other more, we may say, sinister or damaging threats which can occur, which is that the United States is losing in peaceful economic competition, but the United States is still the world's biggest military power. Therefore, the danger is that the United States will resort to military means. By that, incidentally, I don't mean only war. I mean direct use of military means. I mean, you can use indirect threats, military pressure, provocations. Take, for example, the question of Taiwan. I mean, Pelosi's visit to Taiwan is an open violation of the One China policy. It's an interference in China's internal affairs, and it creates a great deal of tension. It's very risky. China's been developing itself if you look at the two most recent crises, it came through the international financial crisis much, much more successfully than any other country. It came through the COVID crisis more successfully than any other country. So those are the risks. I think it's quite clear on the basis of more than the last 70 years that China will come through them.
Today, I learned so much from John Ross. He taught me about Chinese-style modernization and the main keys that make it different from Western modernization. I can't wait to learn more. Please stick with us as we continue to cover China's two sessions.